Stand by for sighting of the Flashback February phenomenon at the Marilyn Adams Genealogical Center. It's the North County version of the Marysburg Vortex. An ancestor or historical personality is set free from the stacks for a brief period of time.
Oh my, what's happening? It's happening. Phenomenon is happening. Oh my. Where am I? What's happened? Where am I? I don't know where I am. I'm so upset. Has anyone, I see all these people here, has anyone seen my husband Samuel? He's been missing. He's gone. He's not returned from his trip. I have no idea where he is. Does anyone have any idea? I'm so anxious for news. Oh, I'm sorry. I probably should start from the beginning. My name is Catherine Sprague, and I'm from Hempstead, New York. I was Catherine Smith before Samuel and I married in 1792 in Hempstead, New York. And that's where we made our home and raised our children. Samuel worked at the Long Island shipyards. He built schooners, he was a carpenter, and he was also a logger. And we were happily there. We raised our 6 children there, Parmenas and Catherine and Daniel and Hannah and Hallett. I just know Hallett's going to have such wonderful descendants. And little Catherine, our youngest. And we worked and toiled there for a while. And a friend of ours, Benjamin Smith, lived on Long Island, and he moved to the Quinte Peninsula. And he would write us letters and tell us about the wonderful landscape up there. All of the trees, there was so much. The lumbering industry was really booming. And Benjamin was actually building a sawmill. And he encouraged us to come up to the Quinte Peninsula, to Demarest's village there. And Samuel and I thought about it, and we talked it over with some of the older children, and we decided it was 1810. Samuel was about 40. Talking with the older children, we decided we would make this new start in life. And so we packed up from Hempstead, took the long journey across the land to the mouth of the Oswego River, and got on board a Durham boat. It was a very difficult trip. The Durham boats were really not built for passengers. They were cargo vessels. And they were very long and flat. They had sails that were on hinges that would drop down so you could go under the bridge. There wasn't much protection. There was the captain's cabin and another small cabin where you could go and seek refuge if you needed it. And there were tarpaulins. And during some of the rougher parts of the trip, I would take little Hallett, who was 4, and Catherine, who was 1, and we would seek refuge in the cabins there. And Samuel would take the rest of the children, and they would find shelter under the tarpaulins. And we made our way up the Oswego River and across the Great Lake, Ontario, and eventually ended up at the marsh front at the Quinte Peninsula. We were very glad to get there. And when we arrived, Benjamin Smith and his family were there to greet us, and also the Morden family, who became great friends over the years. While we were there, our 7th child, Smith, was born, and we purchased about 100 acres of land. And the boys, Samuel and the boys and the children and I, would work the land in the summer. And in the winter, Samuel and the boys would fell trees. They were in part of the logging industry. In those days, there wasn't a lot of cash. And we bartered with and traded with each other, but cash was very scarce to find. But we found by selling the timbers, we could get cash. So, as I say, Samuel and the boys would go out and cut down the trees. They cut pine and they cut oak. The pine they would roll out onto the ice over the winter, and they would take the oak logs, square them off, and pile 2 layers on top of the pine, and lash them all together with willow wisps, and prepare this boat for sailing. It had a big, they would attach a big square sail to the boat. There was a small cabin for shelter, a cook stove. The barrels of provisions would be put on board as well. There was an anchor, and a small rowboat was attached to the side for trips to the shore, if that need be. And it was on this raft that Samuel set out, first through Telegraph Narrows, on down through Long Point and Long Reach, out to Kingston, out into the big lake, and all the way to Montreal. And that's where he would sell the lumber and get cash for it and bring it home. And he usually came home in a Durham boat. But he left in the summer of 1816, and it's now moving on to fall, and he has not returned. And I cannot imagine where he must be. We always knew that it was a very perilous journey that he would take on. So much so that in 1813, Samuel, being the very wise man that he was, actually wrote a will. And in the will, he named me as the executrix, and Benjamin Smith and Parmenas, our oldest son, as executors. He left all his land and stock and utensils to me, and all his best furniture, as long as I was a widow. And he also made provisions there for the children to be educated. That was very important, that there be money for education. If he doesn't come back, and we do have to look at this will, it's going to be very difficult to get the children educated. We're just now beginning to bind together and make some schools for the children to go to. The local government is giving us some money as well, but schooling is going to be difficult if at this particular point in time. I'm so worried, and I really fear the worst. I fear that my Samuel has perished somewhere along the way. He could have gotten off one of the rafts to get through the rapids and gotten wet and cold and died of typhoid. He could have drowned. He could have been robbed. I don't know. Any of those things are all possibilities. There was some sightings of perhaps along by Cornwall or Prescott that may have been where he actually perished. But I fear so much my Samuel is not coming home. But I will do the best I can. I will carry on. I have my grown children. I have my good friends, the Smiths and the Mordens, and I've made many more good friends here. And I think I will stay on the farm on the North Port as long as I can, and perhaps even be buried on my farm when my time comes. I'm hoping, if you hear any news, if you hear anything, my name is Catherine Sprague. My husband is Samuel. Please, please, let me know if you hear anything of him.